Welcome to Bob Cargill's Marketing Show, a ridiculously awesome podcast bursting with insightful commentaries and intriguing conversations on the topics and issues that are on the minds of marketers, advertisers, social media, and PR professionals today. Hey everybody, this is Bob Cargill from Bob Cargill's Marketing Show, and I am here at Out of Office, a ridiculously awesome co-working space. You've heard me talk from here before. I come here often. It's in Hudson, Massachusetts. Love working here. Love talking to others here. And one of those others is Michelle Mercier. Michelle, I met here, months ago. We've chatted. We have not worked together. We've seen each other in passing. But today, I'm going to get to know Michelle Mercier much better, as will you. Folks, let me introduce you to Michelle Mercier. She is CEO and founder of Create Honesty, a lifestyle company that has programs and products, and she's an international best-selling author. She's a life coach, and she's going to tell you much, much better than I can what she does. Michelle, welcome. Thank you for being here. Tell my listeners, our listeners, all about yourself.
Yeah, well, thank you, Bob, for having me. I'm so excited that we're sitting here in one room and actually able to talk to each other, because we have been kind of like ships passing in Out of Office, which, again, just to give a shout out to the space before I jump in, I second everything Bob said. This place is awesome. And I met so many great people like Bob. So just kind of going back to my background, like you said, I run a company called Create Honesty, Inc. And that name came from exactly what it sounds like. I wanted to keep myself honest, and I want to make sure that other people as well can live the life that they want and not be stuck in the shoulds of the world, as I like to say, that you should look a certain way, should act a certain way, should run your business a certain way. So I came out of corporate America. I'm a true kind of corporate refugee, as you would say. But my background, is pretty eclectic when you look at where I came from and how I got here to today.
Very interesting, and we've talked before we turned the microphone on, if you will, and a lot of what you're doing, it's similar to, in a way, to what I do, or at least your approach to business. Yeah. And part of me is envious, Michelle, meaning I love the idea that you are working in such a transparent fashion, meaning don't get stuck in the shoulds of the world, if you will.
Yeah, we call it don't should all over yourself, literally.
I love that. Do you have a T-shirt that says that?
I should.
You should. No, but you shouldn't say should.
I know. I will have a T-shirt. You'll hold me accountable on that too, Bob. Yeah.
So I think it's it's the way we should. Now I'm going to catch myself.
Exactly.
Live in this day and age. I mean, you only get one shot, and why put live according to how others think you should live, and all of that.
Right. And I mean, that stemmed after spending, my undergraduate was spent in theater and music. I was always a creative person. I, had an agent. I always wanted to be a creator until I hit a certain age, like a lot of people do. And, you need a mortgage. You want to have a family. You need a car. You need all of these things that you should have. So I jumped into corporate America, and I had very much the mentality of a lot of women of I will have it all and do it all and be it all, until it was just too much, and I burned out, and I didn't recognize myself anymore. So hence where Create Honesty came from.
I love the name of the company. I can totally relate, and I think we're similar. Again, is I am on my own, and I think I live a lot like, I think I practice a lot what you may preach, because I try to live transparently. And I wouldn't necessarily say I'm a corporate refugee in that it's possible I go back to corporate America. So don't want to burn any bridges, to be honest.
But anything can happen in the world as long as you want it to happen.
And I think corporate life is changing, to be honest with you. So,
it is.
But I can relate, and I agree that when you work 9 to 5 in an office environment, it can be stifling. And I'm a creative person. You know that. I'm a copywriter, creative director, social media guy, right brain all the way. And there are so many rules and regulations. I mean, I said 9 to 5, just that alone. I have to be at the office by 9, or people will frown if I walk in, God forbid, 5 minutes late.
Yeah, agreed.
Why is business like that? versus how we are in our personal lives? Why do you have to change when you go into an office?
I mean, I think people like things in very neat boxes, right? You look at the school systems, you look at the government, you look at work. People like to classify things very black and white, right? Even when you hear the term work-life balance, work is a part of life. So that's a term that I actually balk at, because I will always be out of balance if you ask me to balance those two things.
It should just be life, right?
Right, exactly. Or work-life integration, as I call it. Integrate the work in. So, and I think that's where that old school punch in, punch out mentality came from, because it's in the work bucket versus the life bucket, whereas nowadays, especially, you see it all the time. Look where we are right now at a co-working space, where we're having communal lunches, and I'm looking at a yoga class setting up outside.
But that's the way it should be.
That's the way it should be.
And work different hours. It's 4:12.
Depending on where your creative genius lands.
I showed up here at 3:30 in the afternoon, but I told you I work at home a lot, and I did work at home, and I worked as soon as I got up this morning, so I was at my computer, say, 7:30, 7:45. Not trying to gloat that I work all these long hours, but I'm trying to say, I'm trying to do what you would just kind of saying, integrating
and you
life
work
with work or vice versa.
You work them on your terms. Too, which there is something kind of empowering about that. And there's different types of people too. So having managed very large teams, that there's always different types of people, right? So you're going to come in contact with people who like that kind of.
Some people do like the rigidity.
Yes, they do, and that's fine. It works for them. For myself personally, especially I have 2 little kids. In order to run a business, I can't be boxed in 9 to 5 because I was up at 5 a.m. exercising, and then I jumped on the minute I dropped kids off, and then I'll be back on later on if I have an appointment in between.
Yes.
Work-life integration.
I love that term. You should trademark that, Michelle. Work-life integration.
Put that on a T-shirt.
I still like the what did I say should be on a T-shirt?
Stop shitting on yourself.
Yeah. I love that one. You remembered it. I didn't. So tell me a little bit more about Create Honesty, so we can set the tone for this conversation. Provide us with context.
Yeah. So when I came out of corporate America, keep in mind I climbed the ladder. I was determined to, quote unquote, have it all, right? And this is when I had small children. So I had no idea, because I was told that it was possible, but I wasn't told about the burnout part of it. So, I ran pretty large-scale teams, like PayPal Europe's email operations team. So from a technology perspective, operations, what I like to say, people, process, and technology, all kind of the intersection of that, was my sweet spot. But when I left that landscape, I didn't recognize myself at all, because I went from this creative person to somebody else, cutthroat and competitive and different things like that.
A lot of people will say that is inevitable and unavoidable. Because in other words, I'm looking. So I've been on my own the last 2 years. I've been in business 35 plus years. I absolutely look back and say, wow, I was a different person.
Survival is what it is.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. Though. We sometimes don't have a choice.
No, and you don't. I was literally just having this conversation with somebody earlier, because my company had gone through a lot of being bought and sold in our division. So you saw a lot of fear-based decision-making happening. You saw a lot of people vying for their jobs, essentially. And, you can't fault them for what they did, or what probably even I did at that time, because you're talking about their family, their livelihood, things like that. So, but it does create a different environment to work in, one where you're always worried about what's happening next, because it's out of your control.
So how does Create Honesty create change?
Yeah, so I like to, that's a good segue, I like to, through kind of specifically the programs part of it, let's take that, I like to provide an opportunity or a space or a place for people, specifically women, which is my demographic, to be able to speak honestly. I do things like I host documentary screenings with talkbacks, just to make people think outside of the box, or, and give them a place where they can question things. Or I do pop-up events where, I do self-love stations of retail spaces, because a women's dressing room, people come out and they're usually not happy. So, and for me, from a marketing perspective, that comes in really handy, because it shows other people that you can be transparent too.
So this sounds to me therapeutic to your clients.
Yeah.
And it cathartic.
Yeah, and for me too. I think going back to it, it helped me kind of rebuild myself too, because it mirrored back. So every time that I tell a story or a video, or even when I first started and I was blogging, I had people coming out of the woodwork saying, I had a really good friend who I thought I knew, who I didn't really know. I came out and said, I'm unhappy with my life, I'm changing my life, I'm starting a company. And I would get these long, novel emails from people who I knew on the surface about what was going on in their life that I would never have known about. So especially I've seen it with women and also men, actually. Once people are just waiting for one person to talk. They're waiting for one person to admit stuff's hard or to call bullshit on something. And then, floodgates open.
What if I am a client? If I'm a woman and I work...
Going with it. Sure,
I'll run with this.
I do coach men. I will coach. I'm not going to turn down a man. But we'll take
hypothetically, I'm in your office but I'm not on my own like I am now and calling my own shots. Instead, I work 9 to 5 or 9 to, or let's say 8 to 8, 12-hour days, and I have a ridiculously impossible to deal with boss. How would you help that person who has to every day go back and put up with the same thing, besides telling them to quit their job, if you know what I mean?
Yeah, and let's be honest, that's not realistic for some people. I think, again, we do live in a society, and a lot of people love black and white answers. So they'll be like, oh, just quit your job, and, well, what about my family? What about my 401k? Things like that. We're very fortunate that we can do what we do, I feel like. We
are. We're absolutely blessed.
So when somebody comes to me, I actually just finished up with a client like this that I had her for about 2 years. We talk about what's in her control and what's not within her control. Your boss being a complete, asshole, we'll use that word.
You can use that word.
Is not... What he does is not within your control. What you do and how you react to it is... if you want to take on that energy, if you want to just beat yourself up about it, that's your fault almost. So it's retraining your brain to not let them take up as much real estate in your head.
So what's the difference, if you don't mind me asking, between Create Honesty and me going to see...
a shrink.
Yeah,
so I get that question a lot.
or taking an anxiety medicine.
Or drinking a bottle of wine. So therapists, this is just kind of
So I asked a good question.
No, you did, because I get it all the time.
This is what I want to hear.
It's a very common question with coaching and stuff. So essentially, when you look at a therapist and you go to a therapist, they talk a lot about from childhood and all the stuff that brought you to that point, which is very valuable. Obviously they're therapists. They have degrees in this stuff, which is amazing. But the difference is that from a coaching perspective, I meet you where you're at right now. And, we're not going to not look backwards because you've got old habits, you've got old mindsets, you've got all that stuff there. But I'm not going to delve way back to your childhood and spend a time there. We're going to move forward because that's what you came to me for, essentially.
And you can't prescribe anything. So
No.
I'm kidding, but of course you can't.
I wish. No, I'm just kidding.
That's so you're going to cut right to the chase, deal with the reality, and not necessarily say quit your job, meaning you're going to help them cope, you're going to help them learn this individual, you're going to help them learn skills.
I have
develop
a couple
coping
different
mechanisms.
Yeah, a couple different approaches. So essentially, I equate it to honestly strategic planning. If you were looking at a company, you would come into a company as a consultant, and you would look at
that's a great
what is the vision that you want for your ideal state of your life, right?
That.
Same as you would do in a company.
Yep.
And then we look and say, okay, let's map that out. Okay, from there's your vision, and then what's your strategy to get there? And then also, are there any skill set gaps? Do you
I've
need
been
to
working
learn
on my strategy for about
That's what
60 years.
Every day. No, it's a work in progress.
Yeah, and it reinvents itself daily, yes.
And people are always asking me, like, well, are you an accountability partner? Are you this? Are you that? It depends on the person. I have people, thank goodness I have project management in my background, that I legit project manage.
So I don't know if I'm a candidate, and I don't know if I'll be knocking on your door tomorrow, but you have convinced me, meaning I totally understand what you do now. After all these times we've just passed in the halls
I think also looking at what I like to call energy drainers and energy builders. If you're walking through your life, especially as an entrepreneur or in a corporate setting,
yes,
like you just said, if you have a boss who is, every time you come in contact with them, your energy gets zapped, right? You feel it, especially if you're working with somebody hostile all the time. Or someone who's just a different personality than you, especially if you're a manager, who's draining your energy, who's building that energy back up, and how do you balance the two of them out? So if your workday is going to completely suck, what are you doing to counteract that when you walk out that door? Being more mindful of that part too.
I would go for a long run.
I know, yeah.
Or maybe have a beer.
Or 5, yeah.
So I can relate, again, to everything, the what you do, how you approach things.
Thanks.
The fact that you're an author, again, is very impressive to me. Meaning the fact that you have your own business, number one. Number two, you're an author. Tell me about your book or books.
So I'm a published author in a women's anthology book. So essentially in that book, I told the story of Create Honesty because it was my original kind of coming to fruition story.
Yes.
And I was, in the book itself is called Courageous Hearts, and it was a lot of different women doing exactly that.
That's excellent.
Saying this is real life.
Cool. Yep.
And this is what came of it. So I was just hoping, by telling that story, one person reads it, cool, we're good.
If you were to summarize that story, and maybe you've already included some of what the answer may be, how would you, what are the kernels, the nuggets that you could share about that story?
The story itself is called Smash It All and Build Anew, because when I came out of corporate America, I looked around, and as I've said, I didn't really recognize a lot of it, and I just blew it up. I am very, very educated on what a business plan looks like, a marketing plan, all of that stuff. But when I started my business, I didn't do any of that purposely.
So when you say blew it up in terms of how you're going to do things as a businesswoman.
Right, and looking at my life, like we just described from the coaching perspective, I had a choice when I was actually laid off because they outsourced our entire team. So I had a choice whether or not I could easily just step back right back into a 6-figure job, or I could smash it all and build anew.
I love that. That's another T-shirt, by the way.
I know. Dude, write these down. You're just building my product line.
No, I'm very serious. Because I can see a big hammer and rocks shattering. Or
and I mean, in the story, you'll hear, at the time, my youngest son had a lot of medical complications. We had literally just gotten him medically stable. I was doing pretty good until, I lost my job. Which wasn't a testament to my capabilities because they were outsourcing the entire team.
Of course not.
But it shattered my reality because I was so heavily invested in my job. Too invested, actually.
So in a way, this transformation of Michelle Mercier wasn't planned. It was your reaction to a confluence, if that's the right word, of unfortunate, challenging events.
I think many of us, when we're in kind of that quote-unquote 9-to-5 grind, dream of being able to jump ship and start our own businesses.
I had one go-around in the 90s myself, 7 years on my own. This is my second, and maybe, I hope this lasts for a number of years, if not, the rest of my career. Like you say, I think everybody, at some point in their life, dreams of being their own boss and calling the shots. I think, though, corporate America is changing a bit, meaning I still stay in touch with it. I see, I go into my clients' offices from time to time, have meetings, work there on site. I know a lot of people doing the 9-to-5 thing still. I think it's loosening up.
Oh, I agree 100%. And by no means am I a hater of corporate America, because I'm also a true believer that, no matter what experiences that you're going through, you're filling your tool belt. I learned ridiculous amounts of strategic planning and just so much knowledge from that part of my life that I would never have gotten.
I can tell, because you when you're talking about strategic plans and vision and these are terms they're general, but they're from the corporate world. That's what I do for my clients, and this is what you're doing for your clients.
And being an entrepreneur, what our skill sets are comes in really handy, because you don't have to hire it out.
You are right.
So I built my website.
Yes, yes.
I don't need to talk about market strategy because I know it.
Tell me, that's Create Honesty, but there's also at least one other in the book we touched on.
Yeah.
You also have Polka Dot Powerhouse. Love that name.
Yeah.
Another T-shirt or hat.
No, it has its own stuff. So
it should. Polka Dot Powerhouse. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So Polka Dot Powerhouse is a women's connection company, is what it's called. Hence, connecting the dots, or Polka Dot Powerhouse.
Now I get that too.
Yeah, right.
I'm learning everything there is to know about Michelle Mercier,
thank you.
So is anyone who's listening.
That's awesome. Good. And its founder, Shannon Crotty. She lives out west, and I'm going to paraphrase her story, is that basically she moved to a place and she didn't have any female friends, and she was starting a real estate business and she was doing all this stuff and didn't have a support system behind it. So I believe, if I'm correct, that she started a magazine first just geared towards women, and it blew up, and people said, we want to do this in person. And that was about 6 years ago, and now we are at well over 3,500 members worldwide.
Jeez.
And I run the one of the local chapters here in the state of Massachusetts. There's 6 chapters, 2 others in Rhode Island, 1 in New Hampshire, but ideally they're really popping up all over the world.
What do you do at Polka Dot Powerhouse?
So it is, like I said, a women's connection group, which a lot of times, again, going back to that black and white, is it work or is it life? Is it social or is it networking? It's a little bit of both. So my chapter in particular, I like to set the tone for 360-degree support for women. So you want to walk into the room and you need a marketing plan? What? Go ahead.
You must be like, people must gravitate towards you.
Yeah.
I mean, between Create Honesty and Polka Dot Powerhouse.
Well, for
it's
me,
almost
it was
like
a
if you got a
no-brainer.
problem, see Michelle.
It was almost a no-brainer, too, because I was a member in the Metro West chapter.
And I don't mean a problem, but if you want advice, if you want counsel, if you want to strengthen.
Well, thank you. I appreciate
seriously.
it.
No, you are like.
Thank you. Comes in handy when
maybe
you
I will be knocking on your door tomorrow.
Cool. But Polka Dot Powerhouse, it's a sisterhood, essentially. And their 2 core values, which I absolutely love, are abundance mentality. So there's no competition. There's no, there's only a single seat of somebody. It's reached truly, and they actually do walk the walk, talk the talk of we all go up together. And then no drama, which literally in the managing director's handbook, it tells you how to diffuse the drama.
How ironic, no drama, and you have a theatrical background.
Right. I think a friend once told
You're talking
me,
about
like,
a different kind
Michelle
of drama,
is, always has drama, but she's not drama.
Not dramatic.
I'm a pretty chill person.
No, and it's another really definition of drama we're talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
The negative drama that does come with life, but you guys leave that at the door as you walk in. And Polka Dot Powerhouse, again, until I met you, I hadn't heard of that. Really impressive, and you get involved in all kinds of groups, basically, generally speaking, and usually at the leadership level. So.
Yeah, I go back and forth. I think when I first started my business, you probably know this too, you first come out of the gates of the business, you hustle, right? And my first priority was to build the community first and, bring the business after, because I think that is going to lend itself to organic growth no matter what you do. You do it great on social media all the time. And you're always
active.
Talking to people.
Yes.
Yeah. So when I stepped in, I was highly involved with the Metro West Network for Women in their beginning. I was on the board for the Metro West Conference for Women. I'm obviously a big advocate for women in my company and what I do. Ironically, I have 2 sons, so I'm also very conscious of both sides.
Yes. But you know what? You can, and I'm sure you are, raise them to see both perspectives.
Yes.
Maybe a little bit unlike when I grew up back. My parents did a fantastic job of raising us children, but back in those days,
it's a different mentality.
My sister will tell you, I don't think girls could play sports that me and my brother did play. So what I'm saying is it was a different time. Today's times are different, and you are a mom, a parent who. Your kids are going to benefit so much.
I hope
They're
so.
going to be well-rounded.
And I have the best husband in the world, I have to say too, because we go at this thing, life, whether it's a career, whatever it is, with having open conversations. So when
you must
I was
be awesome parents.
There's good days and bads. It's parenting. There's
right.
ups
That's
and downs. But
when
I was on a plane to Europe for PayPal, he was here. And I would have people with the gender stereotype automatically calling mom with a sick kid. And I'd be like, I am in London. I'm going to need you to call my husband.
Yep.
And, he's perfectly capable. He's an awesome human being.
Yep.
So we kind of
again, stereotypes in times are changing gradually.
Yeah.
But I think in the future they're going to have changed drastically.
I hope so. I mean, with Create Honesty, I've also done some serious projects. Like I did a 24 Hours of Me Too project where I had women submit in.
Geez.
I probably got within 24 hours. I got easily over 100 submissions because it was anonymous.
Locally?
Yes.
And what did they submit? Written or?
Yes. So they submitted it via online. It was everything you could imagine and more awfulness.
What did you do with the submissions? What was
the point of it was to do 24 hours of Me Too on social media. So at the time, I think I was just on Facebook. So every hour, I got on and did a different video reading a different story. And then on the half hour...
So they gave you permission anonymously to tell their stories. When was this? I would have...
I think it was when Me Too blew up.
Was it only open? Was it open to anybody to...
Yeah.
Or was it a Facebook group that's private?
No, it was open to everybody. It was on my public page, and then on the half hour I dropped quotes.
You
so you
have
can
done
probably
amazing
go back
things.
through it.
The Me Too movement is so necessary, and
yeah.
I wish it was changing things even quicker. I mean, it has created change, but we obviously have not come along
and my husband read
quickly
some of
enough
them too, and it was educational. I mean, and one woman I'll never forget was saying, like, I have never said this to anyone, and I'm 60-something years old.
Okay.
But because of the anonymity.
Yep. Anonymity. Yeah, that's a tough word. I'm not even going to try it. You said it.
It works. But I mean, and that's also the power of social media.
Yes.
Like all of those women got their stories heard.
A plug for social media, but I don't want to short strip that subject. A deeply personal subject, very, very serious subject and topic, and I applaud you.
Thank you. It's hard.
Going forward, and I'm not shitting you, I want to help you if I can.
Thank you.
If you'll allow me to,
that'd be awesome.
if you do something like that again, because I believe strongly in the Me Too movement, support it, obviously 110%. My wife and I, try to go into the marches on the Common for, supporting all kinds of issues. That one is one that has to change, gender inequality and abuse.
And I think it's not just...
we have to correct things in this world.
It's not just men have to act better. It's on all sides. So there's a great documentary. The name is escaping me right now. The Mask We Live In, if anyone has a chance to watch
The Mask We Live In.
The Mask We or The Mask You Live In.
Okay.
Like it's on Netflix.
Yeah. I went to that women's march in Boston like a year or two ago.
Good.
Year and a half. It was insane. I mean, how many people were there? And it wasn't just women. It was men, women, children.
Well, and that's the
it was
thing,
empowering.
I felt full conversation.
I felt like this. We were all together.
As you should.
Entwined.
And that documentary in particular documents men. So it talks about at the point and the age in which boys are told, don't cry, be strong, and where boys only end up with two emotions, which is anger or happy, and it goes all through that, and you can see where that part of it comes from.
How ironic that I remember.
The march. That's cool.
Yeah, and I was going to say something personal, and I'll say it. When I was young, I remember being brought to a therapist and being told I was an angry kid.
Yeah.
And but that was the sign of the times. I mean, what
the hell else
young
do?
back in the 70s? What kid wasn't? What young boy wasn't angry?
I mean, and that's the thing is and it's not scapegoating, because when you're dealing with a conversation like rape, that's about power. That's not about sex. That's there's different things behind that.
It's multi-pronged.
Exactly.
There's so many elements and factors, but I'm glad you brought it up. I'm really glad you brought it up.
It's taken an interesting turn.
That's all right. In that turn you mentioned, and I'm going to seize on, is social media. So this is a marketing show, and in the last few minutes, we have no time limit. This is a podcast. How much of a proponent I am of social media. I've been in marketing forever. People know that I was doing marketing before the internet. Yikes, scary. Yes, I'm that old.
Print marketing.
I started.
Direct marketing. Yeah, I know.
I did have an electric typewriter in my first job, not a non-electric typewriter, so I'm not that old. And we did have telephones, but we didn't have cell phones.
Did you have a beeper, Bob? Because that was.
I never had it. I wasn't that cool.
That was a good
I don't
time.
think I had a pager.
I think mine was like neon green back in the day. It was a good time.
See, I was a creative guy, though. I think all the business side of things, you know.
Yeah, you didn't get the beeper.
Yeah, I wasn't an executive level type person who was that important. I was back in the kitchen writing copy and working with the designers. Yeah. But social media came along. 2004, I started my blog. I'm huge on social media.
Good.
People know I may be old, but I'm as active, I think, more so.
More so than a lot of the people who are quote-unquote younger.
Thank you. Yes, I work with the quote-unquote younger people, and I love them, and I work well with them. We I think, what is it called? Intergenerational or, cross-generational teams is what it's all about. But what I'm trying to get to, I am embracing and have, ever since social media came along, modern day communications, and I love social media, and this isn't about me though. Tell me about your use of social media.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm obviously a big proponent of marketing too, because that's the world I came out of. Yes. I've seen the impact of it. I've seen how well it works. I think as a business owner and as a mom of 2 young children, I think using social media responsibly is a good idea, because it will stay around for the rest of your life, right? But from a business perspective, blogging, social media, being on Facebook, being on Instagram, whatever you can do well and do consistently is my 2 cents. I have a lot of clients who will come to me and freak out because they do not have the bandwidth or the time to be on every single platform, and someone in some marketing seminar told them get on every single platform and do every single thing.
I wouldn't say that. Those are my competitors saying that. I would never say that.
But I mean, and that's why I have to literally talk them off the ledge.
Yes, and it can also stress. I could see that it driving them to your doorstep because if it's too much pressure. It's trying to be all things to all people, both in real life and online, and that's impossible.
And it's not targeted marketing because you go where your people are.
Yes.
And that's where I go. You know what I mean? I have an Instagram account. I'm not going to be on Twitter. I have a Twitter account. I don't use it because that's not where I'm engaging with my audience. I'm engaging with my audience via visuals or Insta stories or videos on Facebook.
So, folks, what Michelle's saying, and I totally agree with you, be where your audience is. You don't have to use all the channels. You don't have to use any of them, frankly, if your customers aren't there. Yeah. I strongly advocate for trying some of them, seeing if you get interaction, engagement, traction, and focusing there. So in example, in my case, I'm on all the channels and I have different pockets, if you will, of my constituency in different places. Mm-hmm. But no matter who you are, know where your audience is, use those channels, but be reasonable about the time you can put into them. And if you don't have the time, you just talk to someone like me.
Well, right, exactly. You outsource that shit. So, I mean, and it's also, I think you brought up a good point, too. Actually communicating with people is a good thing, too. I
always say, it's the next best thing to in-person. In-person is the best form of communication.
Thank you for saying that.
No, absolutely. But that's why on social media, I use a ton of video, and video is taking off big time on social media because is as close you can get to being there in real life. Podcasts are pretty close too. They hear our voice. We are doing this.
We're doing it live.
Yeah, it's live. It's actually live to tape or whatever. I mean, we are not going to edit this, folks. So you are hearing, everything. Meaning, I have a sore throat now. I'm going to have to clear my throat in a minute. I forgot to bring water into here.
I drank mine.
So that's real. That's transparent.
Yeah, I mean, and it's also. Do you have clients that come to you and they want the magic bullet? That is what I get a lot. Tell me exactly what I should do. Step 1, step 2, step 3. And it's not that easy. You have to test and tweak. People
the best clients will hire an agency or a consultant, or in terms of if they're doing it themselves, they will integrate their approach to marketing, try a lot of different things, see what works best, see what you can afford, budget-wise, time-wise, and also be prepared to change course quickly because the times are changing faster than ever. So,
Right.
so I'm saying video on LinkedIn is working great, but frankly, it was working a little better 6 months ago, and in a year or two, it may not be working at all because it's getting saturated.
Yes.
And maybe then they'll shift. You mentioned Instagram stories. Maybe they'll shift over to Instagram stories, or maybe it'll be Facebook. Or frankly, God knows, social media might go away.
Is MySpace coming back?
Yeah, maybe MySpace will come back, or maybe it'll be all in person or direct mail. Or,
I mean, and that's the thing is, I think people want kind of that solution. I hear from clients a lot, like there's a whole buzz around like creating a pipeline and driving all that stuff, which is great. But you can't just set it and forget it completely.
Totally
And I think people are looking for that approach. But that's like, find the golden ticket. It's not a thing. Or unicorn. We'll call it a unicorn. Mythical.
So I've worked, we talked about corporate America, and we absolutely made a point of saying we're not denigrating corporate America by no means. And same goes for when I talk about agencies. I worked at agencies my whole life and my whole career. And agencies will get you on a retainer, and they will try to set up a program that works and is relatively automated. What I love about being on my own is the kind of business I'm getting is clients that may have already worked with an agency or thinking about working with an agency, but they'd rather have a more custom approach to their marketing and be able to tweak it as you go and be able to talk to the people who are doing the work. In this case would be me and the few people I might subcontract.
I agree with what you're saying is and it depends on the business. I mean, obviously, I used to work with enterprise level clients. We're talking like NFL, Bed Bath & Beyond. They're machines, essentially.
And so they need an agency. They need
and they have the budgets for an agency.
They have
too.
the budget.
Right? So, I mean, if you have the budget for an agency, then you can have a dedicated team that you can talk to on the regular to be tweaking your marketing.
But I think, and I'll go on the record as saying this, I think corporate America in general is too big to follow and react and act on how quickly things are changing. Because if I've done about 70 episodes of this podcast in a year and a half, I wouldn't have this podcast if I was working in an agency, and the agency probably wouldn't have done 70 plus episodes if it said I could have a podcast because right, exactly, layers of approval.
I'm just thinking of from a project.
Are we using the right microphone?
Exactly.
Are you taking up too much billable time?
Yeah, I mean,
do you have the right voice? You sure you want Michelle as a guest?
Yeah,
I'm joking.
No. But you're completely spot on. That's the thing.
Right?
I mean, that's one thing I do love about is my brain has always worked very quickly. I see something, I identify, and that's come in very handy from the strategic planning standpoint or from the operational excellence standpoint of looking at the landscape and saying, okay, how do we, make this as efficient as possible so that we can succeed, but also perform at our highest level. And when you're part of a very large company and you sit and you see those things, it's like they're right at your fingertips, but you can't move the whole ship quick enough.
I think ideally, and I've always said this, and again, I have no problem declaring this, that companies should hire people they trust, people who are good at what they do, and let them do their thing and listen to them. Because usually they know more than the people who hired them do. Because you're hiring people who are in the trenches, who roll up the sleeves, live and breathe their areas of expertise. Let them do their damn thing, and you'll be more successful.
I mean, and that's kind of the hallmark, in my opinion, of a good leader. You shouldn't have to be in the weeds all the time. You should hire good people, get out of their way. And I mean, obviously the logistics of that, it takes time to build the trust. It takes time to build a relationship with your team. But I've always kind of taken the approach with leadership and leading my teams as if I don't have to be there and shit's running smoothly, that's a win.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
It is not my job to be a SME, subject matter expert in all the stuff. It's my job as a leader to know a little about a lot and enough to help my employees where they need it. But beyond that, that's their job. They're the subject matter experts. That's kind of been my approach.
Awesome, Michelle. Let me ask you a few more, maybe quick questions, maybe not. Maybe we'll go down some rabbit hole. Who knows? Tell me what you're listening to, reading, watching, anything externally
yeah.
where you are taking in something,
stuff.
knowledge,
Yeah.
entertainment, information.
So it's funny. So I'm one of those type of people. I read like multiple books at once. Like I always have like different things going. So like right now I'm reading Educated by Tara Weaver. That's kind of like about a girl who literally came out of a survivalist family, which I think is an amazing book.
Oh, wow.
But then, I'm turning around and reading, I can't remember the name of the book, but I belong to an entrepreneur's subscription box thing that comes every month.
Gotcha.
And in the box, there's a different business book by a different person, and I'm reading those every single month.
Yep.
As well as, podcasts. I'm a big fan of, like, Sean Croxton's Quote of the Day, Ed Milet, just all different people.
Bob Cargill's Marketing Show.
Yes,
as of this podcast, you will listen to every other one.
But even,
starting
like
with this one?
NPR's one where what is the one that's about the founders of organizations, how they made it, how they make this.
So you listen to podcasts, and podcasts are very hot. And I am telling clients, I think, dabble. Try a podcast. I mean, they're easy to start. I use Podbean. I use, have an external mic, but I can do it right off of my phone, and it's as simple as can be. And you learn a lot about your ability to converse, and you get to know people.
Yeah.
So these are internal benefits, if you will. External, you're building content that you can use to build thought leadership and a stronger presence online.
Right, and you can slice it and dice it and use it in different places strategically.
I told you we'd go down a rabbit hole.
Exactly.
Here I am talking about podcasts in detail.
Just from the educational perspective, every day I try. I try is really the key term. I start my day with, I don't know if you've ever heard of like the Miracle Morning. Have you ever heard that?
No, but
it's
I like
a book.
that.
Go Google it.
Yeah.
I did not come up with it. I wish I had. But every morning it's called SAVERS, and they stand for something. It stands for, let me see if I get it right, silence, affirmation, visioning, or envisioning. Exercise, reading, and scribing, or journaling or writing.
Wow.
So that's kind of, and you'll see a lot of professionals doing that because it sets your tone for the day. So I make sure there's an educational piece to my morning, whether it's a podcast or whether it's a marketing book, whether it's a leadership book. And then, I'm exercising, I'm walking, I'm doing whatever I need to do there. I'm setting my intention for the day. I'm doing my affirmations to get the right mindset on. And I try to what I call bookend my day, right? So if I'm doing that in the morning, there's something happening before my head hits the pillow to go to sleep too. That's comparable. Which is usually I tend to do business reading in the morning and pleasure reading at night.
I agree with that. Yeah. That makes sense. Wind the day down.
Yeah.
And maybe every once in a while you're a guest on a podcast show like today.
Every once in a while, man, and I like it.
Tell me if you had, this is a real different question. I didn't prepare you for this at all, but it's easy. If you had a superpower, you could tell me what your superpower is, or what would you like it to be? Or both.
Maybe I'll do a little bit of both. So I think, my superpower is to deal in the micro and the macro. So what I mean by that is that like I said earlier, I can look at a scenario and see the big picture of it, but I can also see the details and I see them at the same time. So that makes me, I think, pretty cool from the perspective, especially like from running a business as well as,
high
as
level in the weeds if you need to be both.
If I need to be both, I can.
Yep.
And especially if you're an entrepreneur.
I believe that because from hearing you have that corporate enterprise level experience where you do have to be high level, but if you're running your own business, if you're a parent, you are in the weeds.
Yeah, I mean, and that's
so if you put it together.
Yeah, and there's pride in that too. Like, there was a lot of pride for me when I launched my website for my company at first because I made a lot of mistakes. And I was missing my developer team, but at the same time, like, there was pride in that building of it too.
Yep. Of course.
And it allows me to see people as multifaceted too, because again, they're not black and white. People are messy, and there's a lot of things to them. And from a marketing strategy point of view, you need to understand that too.
What advice would you have for people? And this is a very tough question because I'm going to ask you to be general. If someone's in a job that they don't like, but they don't have a choice, how would you
hard question.
how would
Yeah.
you advise them? Because a lot of people don't have a choice. I mean,
Right, agreed.
I imagine there's probably a stat out there somewhere that
Yeah.
the majority of people would rather not be doing what they're doing. That's my guess, even though
Yeah.
everybody says they love their job. What advice would you have
Right.
for them?
So, someone once told me, I think it was a manager when I was in corporate, is number one, if you are going to run or leave, you need to make sure you're running towards something and not away from something. Meaning, I've seen a lot of people jump ship because they couldn't stand where they were, but they jumped to some place that might have been worse, just to jump, just to get out. So that's one piece of advice. But on the kind of tolerating the day-to-day thing, really look at in your day what is within your control and what is not. A lot of the times we spend a lot of the time, like, for example, when I was in corporate America and there's layoffs all the time. Obviously, that is an interesting environment to live in day to day, right? Am I going to have a job? Am I not? Am I not? But, and this is going to be completely oversimplified given that we're on a podcast, but the more that you can shift your mindset to, can I control whether or not I'm being laid off? No, what can I control? I can control getting out and finding another job. I can control, smiling at my coworkers. I can control my reaction if I have a shithead for a boss. I can control what I do when I walk out the door. Do you decide to bring that kind of toxic, crappy energy home to your family? Or do you decide to leave it at the door? And that's one of the hardest things for me too, is everyone always used to say, Michelle, why don't you just view your job as a paycheck? Take the paycheck, shut your mouth, go home, and go on a vacation every once in a while.
Easier said than done.
Right, especially I know for me, that is not an option. I've always bucked against that.
You have passion.
Yeah, and I've always kind of been somebody who's, like I said in my past, I've done everything from theater to running teams to, I like to be able, I'm an entrepreneur at heart, right?
Yes.
But I would say, I always go back to what is within your control in the day. Your mindset is usually in your control.
Yep.
And again, a lot of people listening to this could be like, yeah, well, easier said than done. And it is. It's hard as hell. But if you start your day in one way and you set the intention and you make a decision to say, I don't care, my shithead boss is not going to shake out my self-esteem, or, you take the action, you go find another job, but don't just sit there complacent in it. You know what I mean?
I do. So we're going to say goodbye.
Sure.
And in saying goodbye, before we say goodbye,
yes.
I want people to know how they can reach you, Michelle, if they care to talk to you further.
Yeah.
Continue this conversation with Michelle directly.
Yeah, it's pretty easy, guys. It's on Facebook and Instagram. It is at Create Honesty, all one word, Create Honesty, and then createhonesty.com. You can find me on any of those, and it's pretty straightforward. Or just Google Create Honesty, and you'll probably find me too.
So Michelle Mercier.
Yeah.
At Create Honesty. That's how you can reach her.
Or M Mercier, rather. If you're emailing me. It is M. Mercier.
M. Mercier at createhonesty.com. Yep. Awesome. And I think she creates a lot more than honesty. I think you create
doing my little bit.
Awesomeness, you create coolness, you create smarter people around you, you create good vibes. You created a great episode of my podcast.
No, this was really fun. Thank you. This was really great.
You made it fun.
Cool.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Folks, you've been listening to Bob Cargill's Marketing Show with Michelle Mercier of Create Honesty, and appreciate all you guys for listening, and we will talk to you again soon.